Okay. All right, welcome everybody. We are so close to having a physical quorum, but we still do not. So I am calling the meeting of the ETSB to order. A physical quorum of the members is not present. However, pursuant to Section 70 of the Open Meetings Act, members are permitted to attend remotely. Either one member of the committee, the chief administrative officer, or our chief legal counsel are physically present at the regular meeting location. In-person attendance and public comments are allowed, subject to attendance limitations required to ensure the health and safety of those who attend. So clerk, please call the roll.
Indalcio.
Here.
Odu. Oh, I'm sorry, I have the old sheet. He's not up here anymore.
Swanson.
All right, sorry, Indalcio. Oh, you're already here.
I'm
Echo.
here.
Franz.
Here.
Kramer. Kramer.
Oh, he's frozen up. Or he's good at
Here.
that.
All right. Moranowitz.
Yep.
Renahan.
Here.
Shar.
Here.
Horsey.
Here.
Swanson. Tetmeyer.
Here.
James. Here. Ansel.
Here.
Thank you very much. Do we have any public comment?
No public comment this morning.
All right. Regards to chairman's remarks, we're going to recognize some people, but first I want to let everybody know under our item 7C purchase resolutions, we have an emergency procurement to purchase radio batteries for our fire radios, and we run into an issue on using the treasurer's credit card. So because of that, we're going to have a special call meeting to approve the actual purchase.
Exactly right.
Executive director everyone will give his comment, I guess.
No, that's exactly right. So we were unable to get it onto this agenda. I apologize because of it. At the point that we became aware of this, it was within the 48-hour time frame. So we became aware of it, but there's a lot of steps that have to go through to get something through the payment of claims process in the county. And by the time we were ready to go, the 48 hours had passed. So we need to do a special call. The recommendation would, and it would be the only agenda item. So the recommendation would be maybe next Tuesday, if that works for everyone's calendar. And, you know, literally by the time we do roll call and approve, it's just the payment of claims for the emergency procurement that you're going to hopefully approve today to affirming resolution. So if there's no, I only need 9.
We would
So-
do it about 11 a.m. next Tuesday. Does that work?
Fine.
Member Zekoff and Renahan, I don't know what your committees are at 11 on Tuesdays. We're done by 9.
I usually have home at 11.
You're usually at home by then?
No, home committee or, you know, one of those CDC type meetings.
Oh, right.
It's 11 o'clock.
That starts at 11, okay. I'm doing from the office, okay.
Right now.
Can we,
Mr. Chairman, just so you know, I'll be in a class all next week, so I wouldn't be available any day next week.
well, I wanted to see if we need 7, right?
9.
We need 9.
We need 9.
So who is not available next Tuesday at 11? Chief Shar? Okay, let's.
Member Tillman is not available next.
Oh, I didn't see that.
Yeah, sorry. Actually, I could do it, but I'll probably be in the car, so I can do it.
Okay.
Are we still doing virtual, allowing virtual for the next meeting?
Yeah, we'll still be able to be virtual next week. So okay, so go ahead and put that on your calendars, and we'll make sure a reminder email gets sent out. So next Tuesday at 11 a.m. Probably 5 minutes.
I hope,
5 minutes. So, all right. Thank you very much.
unless there's discussion.
Chief, where's Chief?
You'll be there. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. All right, also under my remarks, we have some congratulations and some recognitions that we want to point out, and we actually have someone in our audience here. This is Angeline Lucato, did I pronounce that right?
We have, if she sits in that chair, then everybody on the screen can see her.
Again, one of our goals is to recognize all the wonderful things our telecommunicators do. You know, it's as I've said before, they don't get all the kudos and the attaboys and you know, that's all we say for the firemen and the policemen and the paramedics, but there's no doubt that the job they do is vital in helping and protecting our public. So we are recognizing telecommunicator 3, Angeline Lucato of DUCOM, who is celebrating her 25th year of service. So we just want to say like to say a few words or share a good story with us? I'm sure you have many.
I don't know, it's gone by faster than I thought, but a little bit way to go, and the times have changed so much in 25 years.
I bet, yes.
Technology,
I do know that.
but
Actually.
technology is not so friendly, but it's worth. It's great helping people. I love it.
Thank you very much. Thanks for being here. We appreciate it. We're also going to recognize telecommunicator 3, Mary Novak of DUCOM, who received an agency commendation for working with a cellular carrier to ping a missing man's cellular phone for 2 days, which resulted in locating the man and coordinating his safe return with law enforcement. So thank you very much and congratulations, Mary Novak. And then we have a Life Save award, and that goes to telecommunicator 2, Marie Smith of DUCOM. She received the award for providing CPR instructions, which contributed to the survival of a 32-year-old female patient who was not conscious and not breathing. So a little clap. Thank you very much, Angeline. You know what? Can we get a quick picture before she leaves? Yeah, wonderful.
Oh, look at you. Okay.
I'll let Linda hop on in here.
Oh, me too.
Any of the board members want to hop in? They're welcome to.
Ryan, you want me to take a picture? So you can.
Yeah, Brian,
Yeah.
I can screw this up. Where you going? Yeah, Brian, you can stand next to your- 1, 2, 3. Don't know which way we're going here, right?
Portrait and landscape, 1, 2, 3. There you go.
Send that to me and I'll
Congratulations.
get it on our DuPage County website. I will. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay.
We have one more resolution acknowledging the contribution of Chief Stephen Gorski of the Darien Woodridge Fire Protection District to the ETSB of DuPage County. Whereas the Emergency Telephone System Board of DuPage County, hereinafter referred to as DuPage ETSB, is an emergency telephone system board established pursuant to section 15.4 of the Local Government Emergency Telephone System Act 50 ILCS 750 15.4, hereinafter the act. And whereas DuPage ETSB has oversight of the enhanced 911 systems, which is a critical and valued state-of-the-art tool for the expeditious response of public safety to citizen requests for emergency service or citizens of the county of DuPage and portions of Cook, Kane, and Will counties. And whereas Chief Stephen Gorski was appointed to the Policy Advisory Committee, PAC, for a term commencing May 14, 2019 through May 12, 2021, serving with diligence and resolve, exercising fiscal responsibility in the furtherance of the best available technology for the protection of enhanced 911 first responders, telecommunicators, and the community at large. And whereas Chief Stephen Gorski, as the PAC Fire Service representative, worked diligently to express the views of the DuPage County fire agencies in the development of the DuPage Emergency Dispatch Interoperable Radio Systems, known as DETRS, policies. And whereas Chief Stephen Gorski, as the PAC Fire Service representative, participated in the initial discussions and survey development for the replacement of the Dieters portables and mobile radios, which will be one of the largest DuPage ETSB projects, both in 911 system infrastructure and cost. Now therefore, I, Greg Schwarzy, Chairman, along with the DuPage Emergency Telephone System Board members, thank Chief Stephen Gorski for his leadership and service to the community and to this board, expressing our gratitude on behalf of the citizens, telecommunicators, and first responders of the DuPage ETSB Enhanced 911 systems, enacted and approved this 9th day in June 2021 week. And Chief Gorski is not online today, so we'll make sure he gets a copy of this. With that being said, I need a motion to establish a consent agenda and combine items. Oh, my apologies. Members' remarks.
Just in case.
Thank you. Okay. I will accept a motion to establish a consent agenda and combine the consent items 6A, B, C, and D.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any questions or comments? Clerk, please call the roll.
Reynolds. Yes. Renahan.
Yes.
Shar.
Yes.
Worzy.
Aye.
Swanson. Tegmeyer.
Aye.
James.
Aye.
Tillman.
Aye.
Andalcio.
Yes.
Eckhoff.
Aye.
Franz.
Yes.
And Kramer.
Aye.
Chief Swanson has logged on.
Watson is here. I had technical difficulties. I apologize, but I.
All right.
Okay, thank you. I need a motion to approve items that we just combined. 6A, the monthly staff report, 6B, revenue report, 911 surcharge funds. Item C, minutes of the policy advisory committee, and D, minutes of the ETS board.
Second.
We have a motion, a second. Any questions, comments? Clerk, please call the roll.
Tegmeyer.
Aye.
James.
Aye.
Tillman.
Aye.
Andalcio.
Aye.
Eckhoff.
Aye.
Franz.
Yes.
Kramer.
Aye.
Ranowitz. Yes. Renahan.
Aye.
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 And Swanson.
Aye.
All right, thank you very much. I need a motion and a second for payment of claims. Item 20-2139, payment of claims for June 9, 2021 for fiscal year 21. Total for $4,580 equalization in the amount of $1,824,650.24.
Second.
A motion, a second. Any questions or comments? Clerk, please call the roll.
Eckhoff.
Aye.
Franz.
Yes.
Kramer.
Aye.
Ranowitz. Yes. Renahan.
Aye.
Shar.
Aye.
Worzy.
Aye.
Swanson.
Aye.
Tegmeyer.
Aye.
James.
Aye.
Tillman.
Aye.
And Andalcio.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. Thank you. I need a motion under change orders to accept item ETS CO 9-21, a resolution approving change order number 1 to Watson Furniture Group doing business as Watson Consoles, PO number 921-019-5119-1 to adjust the furniture to be installed in the DuComp PSAP. It's in the amount of $23.37.
Move teams.
Second. Ranowitz.
Motion a second. Any questions, comments? Clerk, please call the roll.
James.
Aye.
Tillman.
Aye.
Andalcio.
Aye.
Franz.
Yes.
Kramer.
Aye.
Ranowitz. Yes. Renahan.
Aye.
Shar.
Aye.
Worzy.
Aye.
Swanson.
Aye.
Tegmeyer.
Okay, thank you. Motion passes. I need a motion for change order item ETS CO 10-21, a resolution approving change order number 2 to Asset Panda LLC, PO number 919-120-3814-4 for an additional 500 assets to track ETSB inventory. It's a change order in the amount of $427.70.
Move teams.
Second. Ranowitz.
Okay, we have a motion, a second. Any questions or comments? Clerk, please call the roll.
James.
Aye.
Tillman.
Aye.
Adolfo.
Aye.
Aye.
Franz.
Yes.
Kramer.
Aye.
Granowitz. Yes. Renahan.
Aye.
Dar.
Aye.
Aye.
Swanson.
Aye.
Sedmeyer.
Okay, motion passes. Thank you. Under purchase resolutions, I need a motion to accept item ETS R 42-21, affirming awarding resolution to Wiscom LLC, PO number 921031 for the emergency procurement of 150 FM certified batteries for the APX 7000XE fire radios in the amount of $23,815.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any questions or comments? Clerk, call the roll.
Sedmeyer. James.
Aye.
Tillman.
Aye.
Adolfo.
Aye.
Eckhoff.
Aye.
Franz.
Yes.
Kramer.
Aye.
Granowitz. Yes. Renahan.
Aye.
Dar.
Aye.
And Swanson.
Aye.
Thank you very much. Motion passes. Under resolutions, I need a motion to accept item ETSR 43-21, amendment to resolution ETSR 34-20, declaring equipment, inventory, and or property on Exhibit A and inclusion of Exhibit B purchased by the Emergency Telephone System Board of DuPage County as surplus equipment.
Second.
We have a motion and a second.
I actually have a quick comment on this,
Okay.
if I may. So these next two resolutions, the first is amending the equipment surplus list to remove items that DUCOM would like to use as surplus parts. I'm thinking for some things that they have already on their campus. The second resolution that you're going to see is the transfer of those assets from ETSB to DUCOM. So we had to amend the asset list for the auditor and then finalize it with the asset transfer.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions?
Always here to help.
Thank you. Clerk, please call the roll.
Sedmeyer.
Aye.
James.
Aye.
Tillman.
Aye.
Adolfo.
Aye.
Eckhoff.
Aye.
Franz.
Yes. Yes.
Kramer.
Aye.
Granowitz. Yes. Renahan.
Aye.
Dar.
Aye.
Horsey.
Aye.
And Swanson.
Aye.
Great, motion passed. And I need a motion to accept item ETS R 44-21, a resolution approving a transfer of inventory from the county of DuPage on behalf of ETSB of DuPage County to DUCOM.
Motion, Brennan.
Second.
We have a motion, a second. Any questions here? Clerk, please call the roll.
Moranowitz. Yes. Renahan.
Aye.
Sharp.
Aye.
Horsey.
Aye.
Swanson.
Aye.
Sedmeyer.
Aye.
James.
Aye.
Tillman. Tillman.
Can you guys hear me?
There we go.
Aye.
Adolfo.
Aye.
Eckhoff. Franz.
Yes.
And Kramer.
Aye.
Great, motion passes. I'd like to just change up our agenda just a little bit and move item number 11 ahead of 8, 9, and 10 because Chief Hayden is here. There's no issues with that, is there, in State's Attorney's Office? Okay, so Chief Hayden's here to talk about our portable replacement, radio replacement. So, floor is yours.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. On Monday, June 7th, the PAC met again. We had another productive meeting, in my opinion. And just as a reminder, we're trying to meet twice a month to move this project along and get it to the board members as soon as possible. And just briefly, what we covered on Monday, we finally accomplished, we came to a consensus that we're going to pursue encryption. It's an AES 256 encryption. It will meet the federal and STARCOM guidelines. So we accomplished that. We ran into, during our discussion, we discovered too that there's an issue concerning the batteries on the fire side. It's a specific battery to the fire portable. There aren't enough of them available nationally. Linda has bought as many as she can to keep them, certainly did, okay, to keep the fire radio supplied, but it's not going to last us. So we're actually discussing, that maybe we should move the fire portable or the law enforcement portables. But either way, we need to move this project along, and we need to purchase this equipment now. It's actually the lifeline for the police and firemen. So we talked about the batteries and the parts and the recertifying, things like that. We're also going to send out another survey, law enforcement survey and fire survey, to all our member agencies, just to lock down the number of portables that we have, and what personnel use those particular portables. So we'll have exact numbers for our next meeting, which is coming up on June 21st. So I felt it was successful. We're moving ahead. We still hope to have this project to you by July or August. I was optimistic, but if we work hard enough, we can do it. And if you have any questions, I'm ready to answer.
Does anybody have any questions for Chief Hayden?
I do. Is there a concern about NFPA standard, meeting the standard on the radios that we're looking at?
No, I don't believe there is. But part of the discussion with the radios at the PAC level was that they're trying to find an agency right now that's going to certify the new portables. And once they find that new agency and they certify the portables, they don't believe there will be a problem. Motorola is a pretty smart company. And they'll probably be compliant, but we won't know until they're actually tested and certified.
Anybody else have any questions for the chief? I actually do. So with regarding to your survey, are you looking to get how many current radios each of these departments have now, or how many employees or whatever that would need a radio? Because I know you've talked about getting a radio in everybody's hands.
Yes.
Versus instead of the writing position.
You're right. Radio in everyone's hands. So for example, Westmont has paid on call. But Addison has mostly full time. So we want to get a number on paid on call. We want to get a number on auxiliary police officers. For example, the Elmhurst Police Department has auxiliaries.
Gotcha.
The issue keeps coming up about community service officers. So we're going to collect all those numbers and put them together, and at least we will know what we're
Have an idea. Okay. And then my last question, I know there's the encryption subject has been, had some interesting discussions.
Mhm.
Obviously being on the fire side of things, it's nice for us to have the ability to hear what's going on in the police side. Will encryption affect that for us, or is it just going to be every single radio is going to be encrypted, so we'll be able to still continue having that ability?
Every radio will be encrypted, and I may need some help with this.
Are you gonna phone a friend?
Every radio will be encrypted. We'll still have the ability to talk to each other, but then the agencies on the outside of the county that often use agencies coming in that are not on their system, they will also have the ability to talk. I know that that's a very simplified explanation.
Without getting too technical, it requires that we have a multi-key, which allows for encryption on certain talk groups, but not on others. So,
Okay.
so with the fire radios have encryption, and they need to be on a police talk group that's encrypted. And if fire decides that they don't want to encrypt their main talk groups because of mutual aid, that still won't have an impact. So it really comes down to a feature called multi-key, which is part of the package, or would be part of the package.
And if I could just build on that, it's a two-step decision process. First step, the PAC is, I think, recommending, which is all radios get encryption. Then operationally, you figure out which ones do it, which ones operate. So the first is the financial impact on the purchase. The second is operational and how it works. The other driving factor is the state's ITTF mutual aid radios. A lot of those are going encrypted, so it's important to have any radio that's on an interoperable system have the capability.
Thank you.
But the encryption you're recommending is what the state standard is going to be.
Okay, very good. And I want to thank Chief Hayden. He makes time to come to these meetings as well as the 2 a month for the PAC meetings. And As long as he's available, we're going to keep having him come in once a month to our meetings in case anyone has any questions as this moves along. So thank you
Thanks
very
so
much.
much.
Thanks.
Appreciate it.
Going back to item number 8, preliminary budget discussion. I kind of want to start out before I turn this over to our executive director. You know, it's one of our goals and mine, along with our vice chair Franz, to make sure we all understand what's going on in this budget, and so. You know, it's new to me being on this committee. I know many of you have been here a long time, and you're probably, you know, much more on top of it than say I am. But there are some new members on this board as well. So our initial goal is to spend the next, you know, 3 or 4 meetings talking about the budget, hearing what Executive Director Zerwin is proposing, being able to offer our input, making sure we all understand, you know, what's involved, and so that's the goal. And I will let Executive Director Zerwin talk about it, and then we'll open it up for questions and discussion. So thank you.
Okay, so for the budget kickoff, you got a worksheet on where we are currently. I don't know that this is where we're going to end up in terms of the operating budget, which was this sheet here. It never shows well on the screen, so we elected at this point not to do any type of PowerPoint because it would just muddy the water. But so really, you're pretty much about a 6% increase standing right now in the operating budget, and most of those are incremental increases in maintenance contracts and things like that. We'll do a larger breakout of some of the more detailed line items so that you can see that as we go along. We'll talk about legislative next, but the Public Act, or the ETSA statute, was approved and became Public Act 10206. So we now have to take a look at that with the state's attorney and with the PSAPs to see what impact it might have on operating budgets and make adjustments there. Your memo gave a brief overview of where the finance focus group ended up last year. And so for the June meeting, we're going to look at some things that, for today, we're going to look at a couple of things that'll be coming up. Capital is going to be a big question because of the radio project. So we'll start putting numbers into those capital budgets of the things that are coming up that are due to be replaced, either because their maintenance contracts are up and or hardware, software refresh, and those include customer premise equipment, the standard CAD workstations. We did make them, you approved in this year several CAD replacement costs. So there may not be as many workstations, but that also includes monitors. And the monitors are around 3 to 4 years old, depending on which ones we use. So they're starting to burn out. So you'll see some of that. So that money goes into the budget. There's a hardware refresh, and we'll be approaching the board. Your contract renewal, Hexagon would like to have some affirmation by September on whether or not you're going to continue that contract. I don't know that there's any opposition to it. The PMRS advisory committee is meeting this month. We will talk to them about their feelings on the renewal of that contract. It's built in, it includes a hardware refresh. If we get confirmation in September, that allows hardware and some updating to be done on both the RMS side and the CAD side, somewhat ahead of schedule. So we will next month be bringing that forward. I didn't do it this month because I want to know where PMRS was, and that way I could give you the whole package for discussion. So capital is going to be a big deal. That's in the capital technology line item. Also due for replacement is the logger. And along with that, we do know that text to 911, which was kind of on our radar for this year, is going to be a part of that piece because it will be required to be operative by 2023, according to state statute. So there'll be some transfers out. So in the capital equipment, that's 54,110, that would be where the radios are going to be. Now, Paul Rafek, the former CIO, working with Baker Tilly and Treasurer Gwen Henry, looked at how we could set up the reserves or your capital, and it ended up being the capital contingency fund. And that's 54,199. And it's not technically a reserve because reserve in an audit and financial world has certain connotations. The nice thing about the fact that you have a capital contingency line item is that money is there and earmarked, and it allows you to move it or transfer it into your other capital line items as needed. So, you know, there's not as much pressure to figure out all those costs immediately on the board. So those are the three highlighted items in your memo today, because those are where you're going to see the most significant changes based on the projects and the items that we have coming due. Dovetailing on that, we have several, we've been working toward a policy for capital replacement and contingency. So we should be looking at that policy, and because you're doing an intergovernmental agreement, that policy should reflect whatever we decide in the intergovernmental agreement. So those two things will be working. I'll talk about the intergovernmental agreement in a minute. Once the intergovernmental agreement is somewhat finalized or on board, then there are some ordinance changes that should be made to reflect those changes with the IGA. There's also some items in for ordinance to consider. You know, the county has changed the signing power for other department heads, so you'll have to make a decision on whether or not you want to do that. And there's some other ordinance changes. For example, now that we will be going back from a Zoom meeting, we do not have language that allows people to attend, if it allows voting members to attend if they are remote for business or other entities. So there'll be some things that we're going to bring forward for that. Staffing will be a big item in terms of the budget, and the PSAPs and ETSB have been working on those staffing plans in line with the intergovernmental agreement, and we'll have some recommendations. And then the PSAP allocation and how that fits into the schedule based on the projects that we have. So in our standard budget format, we talk about budget impact, and right now, you know, I don't really have a good answer. The other things I don't have answers on is we still don't have a final award for the contract for the statewide network and what that impact will be. And we'll talk about that a little bit more under legislation. So the other future impact to date right now would be the actual radio replacement and how that milestone payment will lay out. And I've been working with Treasurer Henry on a couple of options. And once we have a better idea of where we're going to, and with procurement to line this up, so we can move rather quickly if once you're ready to go. So once we know the brand and the recommendations from PAC, we'll be able to take those items and work through the financing. But we have a couple of options that I think will work well. Your budget is due in a preliminary form to the county board chairman and office September 1st, which means you have July and August and September to present a preliminary operating budget and capital budget. Doesn't mean you can't change it, but they need at least a baseline. And then the key would be to approve in October to stay in line with the county appropriations. So that's the basic overview for now. I think, you know, the original operating budget, as I said, is really from last year to this year. The difference is, you know, approximately just slightly under $500,000, and most of those are incremental increases operating for maintenance contracts and things like that. We don't really have any new services in there at this point. But and the PSAPs are looking at any recommendation, you know, because you have a CAD focus group and you have a tech committee, you know, these things are always being talked about, but it's the kind of final bell of, do you want anything? Is there anything we should be including? So they're looking at those options for anything that isn't already in the budget that they may want to request. So that'll be the only other piece for capital.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Linda?
I just have a couple. It seems to me that when we set up our budget, that we need to anticipate whatever the future costs are going to be, and then start budgeting year to year to meet that purchase of equipment or whatever we need to do. Or if like the encrypted radios are gonna be all of a sudden purchased, then we need to figure out a way to be able to pay that off subsequent to the purchase. And as a board member, that's really all I'm looking to do, is to make sure we've got a system in place that allows us to do that without ringing out the emergency bell. So it's, from what you said, it sounds like we're doing that. And the surcharge from the Springfield is gonna be enough to allow us to do that?
We hope so. You know, right now in capital contingency, you have earmarked $17 million. Radio's rough estimate will be around 24 million. So depending on how those milestone payments come out, you're right in line. I mean, we're not, it's a big purchase. The nicest thing about doing the radios is once we get the radios done, because the board didn't budget over the last 10 years on an annual basis for the replacement, we're a little tight right now. Once we do this, it'll flatten, the cost will flatten and the contribution annually, because you're going to spread it across a 10-year usable life versus trying to do this in 3 or 4 where you're making a larger contribution. So it'll flatten a little bit. So and then the other thing we run into is, because we built 2 brand new beautiful buildings, or PSAP's built 2 brand new beautiful buildings, all that equipment was refreshed roughly at the same time. So that window gets a little tight, and we're working to try to push that out a little bit so it's not as quite of an impact on any one budget year. But I think we'll get there, because certain things we can refresh and other things we'll have to replace, and that'll stretch things out a little bit. So yeah, I think it's the fact that the board's made these moves in the last couple of years have put us in the right position here, Marky.
Yeah, and so that's just what I'm looking forward to going forward. I mean, when we talked about encrypted radios and all these other things, that are way over my head as to terms of how they work, and I have to rely on all of you to tell me we need them. But so long as we've got a plan in place to be able to pay for them on a non-emergency basis, and I'm assuming that still gives us some type of reserves if we do have an emergency with something. Or at least if we don't, then I would think we need to think about some, because most governmental agencies have some type of emergency reserve.
Yes.
Okay,
I'll just
good.
go with the short answer, yes, because until I know what the actual budget numbers are going to be, it's hard to say what that reserve is or isn't. And we're preparing, the treasurer's report is really, that is filed with the county on a monthly basis, is really how much money you have, not your budget per se. And we're putting together an overview of that, so you can kind of see how the money goes in and out, and what the not necessarily reserved, but unobligated amount of money would be, and where that lands out. So it's really how much that is going to, it ebbs and flows, because every year after you do a budget, we get together with Treasurer Henry, and she says, okay, we look at how much you're going to actually need access to, and then the rest of that is invested in the best possible manner. That goes out to bid through the treasurer's office, and those investments are made. So some money is not as accessible as others, but if, like this year, because we're going to be making radio purchasing, or in the next fiscal year, you need to have a little more cash flow. In the future, you might be able to lock that down for better interest rates and things like that. So, you know, some months you've got more reserve and others you don't. We're running pretty steadily at 1.1 million a month in terms of surcharge, and hopefully that won't be too impacted by the statewide network. And if it is, if there's going to be an impact, we probably won't see it in the next year. And that's a reason, you know, this kind of dovetails into the legislative discussion, but that's part of the reason there was only a 2-year renewal of the surcharge of the statute, because that gives us an opportunity to look at how that network's going and do we need to make any adjustments.
Works for me.
Do you have any other questions or comments? Okay, so what should we expect next month? We got, you know, a couple, 2 or 3 more months. So what will we be looking for next month?
My hope is to get you incrementally information so that you can look at it and digest it and come back for discussion points. And then there'll be what I would term direction from the board. So next month, you'll have gotten information throughout the month on different pieces, so that when we get to the board, you can have the board meeting, you can have discussions and provide staff with direction on yes or no, and then we can adjust those numbers, send it out so you can see where we're at. And then we should have a good review at that point of the revenue as it relates to the treasurer's report and that money flow, and we can talk about those pieces. And policy and things and IGA will work from there. The P-STEP directors and we've actually brought the deputy directors into the IGA discussion to talk about staffing, to talk about training, and some of the other key pieces that relate to how they work, and then what the statutory requirements for the ETSB are, and how do we marry that into a way that will make everybody the least unhappy.
Thank you very much. Any other? Yeah.
Chairman, can I just make a few comments, Mark Franz? Sorry, I'm not on video, just actually at a vaccine clinic for our residents here, our final one, just helping out with that a little bit. But I do take a kind of a special interest in this budget discussions over the years. I think the executive director knows, and the board has heard me say before that I think we can provide a little bit better direction than what we've done over my tenure here. And we started doing that, I believe, with a finance work group. We did it for the first time last year, and I thought it provided some benefits. It was a more thorough review, led to a better understanding, in my opinion, provided a little better direction to the staff, and it was a more timely opportunity to review the budget. If we're talking about having a draft budget by September 1st, that gives us 10 weeks from today, and that's 2 meetings. That's just not enough time to cover these topics. So I do think the work group would be beneficial. Previously to that work group, I'm not convinced the ETSB really provided policy direction. It was more just following along because we didn't have a chance to get into these broader discussions. And I think that makes us less effective. ETSB has a unique responsibility to provide funding to 2 separate entities, ACDC and DUCOM. Having them have some voice in this process, I think is essential, and they play a role in different areas, but not necessarily on the budget document. And I think that's where a work group can do a little deeper dive and provide that. Finance committees or work groups are pretty common. Every municipality has a finance committee. DUCOM created a finance committee a few years ago that I think Brian would tell you he labored on and wasn't thrilled about, but and I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I think it's proven to be a valuable asset for him and for the organization. So I don't know why we are not supporting this concept a little bit more. And lastly, and maybe most importantly, it is one of the objectives that this board agreed to a few months ago with our goals, is to use the work group to help formulate the budget. And we've got significant goals here on the docket, and they've been on the docket for a while. An IGA and a PSAP allocation. We gotta make that decision. And Linda pointed out some of these others: equipment replacement, capital contingency, operating reserve, which member Eckhoff just mentioned, staffing, and that potential impact on our budget. And then this radio purchase, which what's the name of the committee is working on it diligently, but there's going to be obviously a financial component of that. And I think the ETSB board needs to be a part of that decision-making process. So I think we should get the work group constituted formally or informally and have them be a part of this process. Thanks for allowing me to go through my thoughts.
Thank you, Vice Chair France. Do any other members have any thoughts or comments? I'd like to hear. You brought up some very good points. I'd like to hear if anyone else has any thoughts about this.
I was, Joe Moreno here. I was on that committee that Mark made reference to, and it was beneficial. It was new to me. I was a new member. I was thoroughly impressed with what you put together, Linda. And it was educational to what Mark said. To have the same people on it, what are we achieving? If then you have some of your board members that know it, right? is it more advantageous to have other perspectives too that come in, that understand it more? And you'll have a better understanding and I think a better appreciation of what's behind it. Those are my comments. Yeah, I think there is some benefit to it. I don't know what stress I just added to in those comments to Linda, but she did a great job and the committee did a great job too.
Thank you very much. Any other comments on this?
I think that while it might be a longer process and we might have to have some additional meetings, I do think that there's an advantage to all of the board participating.
Say it again.
Instead of a small group, right? Having everybody participate.
Which, like you said, may mean more.
Might mean a little bit more work, might need a little more time, but I think that in the end, you'll have more perspective and we'll have more consensus.
Any other questions or comments?
Member Tillman, I would definitely support the finance committee. Member Teams's point, I don't have an opinion one way or another on whether it should be a committee or the whole group, but I'm content with a committee of some sort, and then the committee providing a report to the board overall, or the board working on it collectively. But I definitely support a committee being put together to help prepare the budget and provide it.
Anybody else?
Okay. I'd speak in favor of whichever process that allows us time to go through it. So either a select group of people to just dive in deep and bring a recommendation back to the full board, or the full board have separate budget meetings to keep us on track and, allow the time to go through.
Mr. State's Attorney, what would we need if this was a special group, but it included more than 4 people or whatever? I mean, we're gonna have to put out notices of.
And I'm not sure how you did it last time, but I'm assuming that procedure was proper and fine.
It was under 4, so it was not a quorum.
I wasn't here last year, so I don't know what that was.
So, okay, so we have a couple options. We can meet specifically separate from these second Wednesday of the month meetings and discuss it as a group, or we can maybe have, have 3 people join the committee. That way we aren't breaking quorum, and have a smaller finance sort of committee. I guess I would ask, maybe just get a roll call on what everybody thinks on that, whether they would prefer to do this as a group or as a smaller committee.
Chairman, if I could just make one comment, I think we could do it kind of both ways. I think we can. It's never meant to be exclusive. Anybody who wants to come can come. If it's going to be more than 4 people in a particular meeting, you post 2 days in advance and have your meeting. But it doesn't have to. I think if it's in this format, I just feel like no offense to anybody, but we're all trying to get through this agenda and off to the next meetings. This allows us, I think, an opportunity to go a little deeper dive.
Thank you. Thank you. Anybody else? Member Renahan.
Sorry about that. I would kind of recommend a smaller working group just because I think the people with really the boots on the ground are the ones that are going to be able to give us a more focused view of what is really needed. I mean, I don't have that kind of understanding, but certainly our PSAPs do. And these are big issues.
Thank you. All right. You got any comments on any of this?
Whatever the pleasure of the board, which should be my comment. I think, our discussion was because you have new people on the board. This has been done multiple ways. There was an actual focus group last year. Prior to that, there were budget meetings in small groups. Those board members that wanted a deeper dive came and met, 2 or 3 at a time. In the days when Jim Raisins was here, there was a different type of interest. And so, he was really the one who set up a lot of the format that we're doing with the treasurer. But, so there were small groups of people meeting, going over different budget questions, so that they became familiar. Then we went to a focus group. It's always been kind of, we send a lot of information out. I don't know how to answer all your questions unless you engage me. So either way, if we set it up and there's a meeting, the question would be, I think from the state's attorney's point of view, and you can correct me if Mr. Bruckner, if I'm wrong, but we're going to have to, if anybody can come, we're going to have to know and post and do minutes, irregardless of whether we have 2 people or 4 people once we post it, or 7 people, correct? Right.
But if it's smaller and you only have certain people coming and it's not a majority of the quorum, then it might be different.
Right, but I mean, if you set up a formal and it's only 4, but more people want to listen in, then, and we go over quorum, then we should be posting, we'd have open meetings and we should do minutes. So we'd have to make some decisions on that. Part of the reasoning is you have a lot of new board members who haven't done any budgeting. And we haven't at the board level done the type of deep dive that we used to do in previous years. So,
Well, here's what I'm gonna, oh, go ahead, Mr. Tillman, Member Tillman.
If I can make a recommendation, maybe survey the board members and see who would be interested in being on the committee. I mean, in my opinion, at a minimum, the 2 PSAP directors should be on the committee, and perhaps Member Moranowitz and Member Franz. I mean, they're probably the largest stakeholders of this group for the budget, but perhaps survey the board members, and whoever's interested could be on the committee. This way you'll know whether or not it has to be an open meeting. But I would start at a minimum with the 4, in my opinion, if they're interested, and I would bet they are. That's just my recommendation.
And I was actually going to say, I will, an email will be sent out today, and please respond back. Let me know you're interested in participating in this, and we'll see what kind of response we get. And we'll be doing this via emails since we don't meet again until next month, and we'll make sure everyone is kept up to date on what we decided to do. So, any other questions or comments?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, for the state's attorney, because we have that majority of a quorum for a quorum, I mean, is that factor in and give us a different amount for our work group, or do we have to stay with straight quorum for that?
I would say that if you had 4, you would be okay. Majority of your quorum is 5.
Okay, so we could go to 4.
so last year it was the 2 mayors and managers reps, Member Tegmeyer and Member Conley.
So 4 is good, 5
Yeah,
is too many.
Right. Your ordinance sets your quorum, I believe, at 9.
It requires a supermajority of 9 to approve any resolutions. It doesn't speak to the quorum
The
itself,
only way you conduct business is with 9.
right?
That's your quorum.
So 4 is good then. Okay. All right. Thank you very much. So keep an eye out for your emails on that. Now we are.
Sending that out on your behalf.
I will. Yeah, I'll talk to you guys
Okay,
afterwards.
all right. Just want to make sure I don't forget to do something that I thought you were doing.
Yeah, no, you guys will do it on my behalf.
Okay.
Legislative updates.
All right, so you also got a memo on this, and I wanted to put your mind at ease, and I was not going to go through the entire document, but I did.
Highlighted in yellow.
Yeah. So basically what we did, and we'll have to go through this with the state's attorney's office on certain things. It was kind of an interesting way that it went. The House Bill 3702 that started ETSA, which is how we refer to the Emergency Telephone System Act, was moved into House Bill 3743, which was titled Boxing and Martial Arts. So you really had to look for it, and became Senate Bill number 2. Yeah, welcome to downstate process. I'll go with process. This amendment also included the small cell language. I did not include that in what I gave you because it's another, couple hundred pages, and while it may be of interest to you as board members in a different manner, it really isn't. And I can get it to you separately if you're interested, but it really doesn't pertain to the ETS board business directly. So I eliminated that. So, and it moved very oddly because it went on June 1st at 1:30 in the morning to the Senate, and then went to 2:25 to the House, and on June 3rd, it went right to the governor's office and became Public Act 10209, which is probably the fastest we've ever had a statute become Public Act from the houses in the time that I've been lucky enough to be a part of this. So that's done. What happens next with it is administrative rules, and there's going to be a lot of them for some of the sections that are directly related to ETSB and the PSAPs and how the PSAPs do business and workflow. So some of what we're going to need to talk about, or how we craft the IGA and some of our other documents, are going to depend on those administrative rules too. That's already in process. That goes through JCAR, and the State Advisory Board is working on that with the Illinois State Police as we speak. So also, this is a shorter turnaround. I mentioned that in the budget review. So it's only guaranteeing surcharge till December 31st of 2023. It's positive, but it's shorter, and it's positive because of the statewide network, because if we find there's funding issues, the sooner we open up the statute. Not that you couldn't do it in a year where there's no sunset, but that's not, it's kind of atypical to do that, but it allows us to have a better idea of what the impacts are going to be. Along with that, there's a lot of work that's going to be done on if you remember the email I sent you on, what devices should be paying surcharge, how should that work? There's feelings downstate that it should be one surcharge per phone bill, not device. So, we're gonna have to walk very carefully in how that works. And so the best time to make those changes is when you're looking at the surcharge and how all of that rolls together. So there was no language in the bill this time around because it's very complex. It has to do with the formula and the formula distribution and things like that. So the summary, really quickly, and I gave you a page number and highlighted it for you. If it was a large section, I just ran the highlight down the side to take a look at it. APCO and NINA have been working on, so starting in page 2, APCO and NINA have been working on training standards, and Member Tegmeyer had been part of that group and probably has more to say about it than I do. But it includes, what they're looking at is state certification for telecommunicators and then guidelines for state mandated training like this. There's mandated sexual assault and sexual abuse training. There's emergency medical dispatches required, delivery of services and professional for public safety, telecommunicators and supervisors, which is kind of an expansion. That will adopt rules and minimum standards of continuing education for emergency medical dispatch and 911 services, and establish appropriate testing and certification processes. There's a feeling that once those things can be in place and a standardization and a certification process for telecommunicators, there's a national move by the 911 profession to have telecommunicators recognized as first responders. So putting those same processes and certifications into place, line that up to happen, right? And I personally think it's a good thing. Not that you asked my opinion, but it's a good thing. So pages 3 and 4, we cover new hires and certifications for continuing education of telecommunicators, which is in line with that. I gave you a couple of definitions because they're specific to what you do, and will most likely, there's a ton of definitions, but most likely have an impact to intergovernmental agreements, workflow, and policy. And so the 911 system added, it's somewhat changed how they looked at the 911 network. So including, not limited to, network software applications, databases, CPE components, and operational management procedures required to provide 911 services. So a forward-thinking state's attorney or legal counsel could interpret that to a slight expansion of the system, just saying. And what could be included under there. The authority changed it changed a little bit, say, provide the management and operation of the 911 system. Throughout the statute, there was a lot of cleanup. There were 911 systems that were not technically systems, they were qualified government entities. So throughout the statute, you're going to see that just eliminated. I didn't bother to highlight that on every page. Those are what I consider cleanup and not necessarily 100%. They've changed. So this changed. The 911 system manager used to be considered 911 system coordinator. So now it's a manager. So, you know, whether or not that needs to be changed from anybody's point of view at HR will be a state's attorney recommendation. It says here, you know, who administers, directs, coordinates at the direction of the board. The ETS board are responsible for the implementation, execution of the order of authority. That's what comes out of the Illinois Commerce Commission or the state 911 administrator. In line with the act. Direct dispatch. This is interesting for us. You're already doing this, but it kind of solidifies direct dispatch in public safety, transmits without delay, relay or referral relevant information, and public safety personnel and emergency responders. Because you have a unified system, both PSAPs are able to start initiation of calls or EMD, and then, you know, transfer to who's gonna be on the radio handling that. So you're already in there, but you know, this is the line of getting the service out there first. Emergency call defines it. I won't read that all for you.
I have to go, just don't go putting me on it for
It happens. You know, so there's a lot of definitions. Those are the highlights. Page 23. This is what we talked about earlier. The accepting text 911 by January 1, 2023. We have a limited ability to do that through Smart 911. There's a chat component, but this would be more system infrastructure. And because you have customer premise renewal coming up, this would be the time to plug that in and take a look at it. So the PSAPs will be looking at those options and making a recommendation through the directors and the tech committee. Then there's a whole section on powers, which you know, there was a little bit of change in that. We'll probably, the state's attorney has to look at that and then give some guidance there. So I didn't spend a whole lot of time. Yeah, I gave you homework. Didn't spend a whole lot of time going through a lot of that in terms of this overview, because we'll probably be coming back to you with any policy recommendations or changes based on what we see here. Page 26, I think, you know, records and training for at least 7 years. PSAP's already doing that. What's different here is they should provide that now to the ETSB to have it on file in case there's some sort of audit. But internally, I'm sure they're already compliant because training is a big deal. Uniform technical operations for 911 systems. And all 911 systems are responsible for complying with uniform technical and operations standards that are adopted. Aggregator language. This is, it was long and complex. This is the technical side of the ETSB infrastructures for the telecoms. This is the beginning of that language and that discussion that Member Tillman is interested in how do we charge, who do we charge, how do we identify all of those things. So that's the beginning of tying the aggregator, which is kind of like a third-party intermediate, without going into a lot of technical detail, of how 911 is distributed or provided. So that sort of brings that in and starts that piece. So we're getting there. There was a little bit of tightening of the language of this came out of some of the civil unrest, false 911 calls, making false alarms and things like that. It made it a criminal offense, but tightened up some of the regulations. And one of the interesting things about some of the legislation and what you can charge a surcharge for, you know, because we use the cameras at your house, it can be set up to dial 911, but there is language in the statute that talks about auto alarms and alerting devices because they don't have a two-way communication. So, you know, the more technology advances, the more complicated this becomes as to how we make it work and exactly who or what is going to be calling 911, you know, video, text, chat, Alexa, yeah, those kind of things. So The statute on the powers, the highlight there was designating the 911 system manager. That was probably the biggest addition to the powers. And changes to the makeup of the state advisory board. In the past, there was a seat for a municipal member. It was really kind of a Illinois municipal representative. And the initial thought was because there was so much Cook County representation that having a village manager type of person on the board would be handy. That person's no longer on the board. And so instead the change became breaking up the two, the smaller county seat. There were 3 county representative seats. The smaller seat was broken into 2 to balance out the distribution of the representation. And then because there are so many joint ETSBs or municipal ETSBs, Northwest Central would be a good example of that. Glenview, aside from just, or Naperville, you know, that there's an opportunity for a seat for that representation as well. Other than that, that's the quick and dirty overview of all those pages. But as I say, it requires some review by the state's attorney's office for specifics, you know, ordinance, by ordinance recommendations, and some of what we'll tell you will depend on what happens with administrative rules in terms of, you know, who's going to pay for training, what the requirements are going to be. Your budget right now between the training itself and training costs like travel has about $200,000 in it. So we feel somewhat comfortable at this point that we have enough to support any required training, although there is a piece where it says that the state training that's required will come out of state costs, which means it's surcharge money going specifically there. So it's a little bit impact on what you're going to get, but it's covered, so less out of pocket locally, in theory. So in 50,000 words or less.
First of all, thank you for valuable information, and it's so valuable to this board that you're on top of that, and that was a very good detailed explanation. So anybody have any questions on legislative? Okay. We are getting close to being done here. I know this is going a little long. System design.
Mr. Chair, Mark France here real quick. Just, I wanted to reiterate too, thank you, Linda, for staying on top of this and providing this detailed report. I was one of the folks that requested it, so really appreciate it. Thanks for staying on top of it.
Thank you, Vice Chair. System design.
I don't have anything other than what's been reported for the month in the monthly report.
Do we have any old business? Seeing none, do we have any new business? Okay, no executive session today, so I need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any questions?
I have a comment.
Yes.
It says on your agenda that the next meeting will be Wednesday, July 4th, 3500B/virtual. Depending on what the government does, it may not be virtual.
Thank you. Thank you. Be aware our next meeting scheduled for July 14th may not allow virtual, so pay attention to what's going on, and then we'll make sure we get an email sent out too if we get something different. So clerk, call the roll.
Mark. Aye.
Team. Aye.
Tillman.
Aye.
Adolcio. Aye. Peckoff. Franz.
Yes.
Kramer.
Aye.
Ranowitz. Yes. Brennahan.
Aye.
Dar.
Aye.
Corsi.
Aye.
And Swanson.
Aye.
Thank you very much. See you next month.
You.